Scott, are you with us?
Yep.
You want to run the public hearing or?
No, you can go ahead and do that.
I'd like to call to order the planning and zoning public hearing for Nathan Musser application for 758 for subdivision. I don't have any, so I don't have the wording from the newspaper in front of me. So did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. Board members, I'm going to do a little different because we have a new member. Would you state your name?
Judith Allen.
Who is a
Also.
John Savage, welcome.
Pat Ray.
Full member. They didn't even in full member. Steve's the man. Just to introduce everybody to everybody. Can I get Nate, if you want to come on up and show us what you got?
Passing the plans right outside.
Yep.
Basically, I'm just looking to subdivide my property. Almost in half. So one's a little bit more. For the purpose of, family. So I'd like to have a family come in from out of state and go on the property.
Yep.
First page is the proposed split. Second page is where the proposed house will go. So the small house on the right is where my existing house will go.
And the splits where?
The split size.
I just made sure that works.
So I got approval from Lumpy South. They came out, they did the test hole, and everything. Everything's good with that. Got approval last week from Wetlands. So they approved it, sent that through everything. And the new building lot it's not near Wetlands. So they approved that last week. DOT can't really approve anything until I get approval from you guys are. So, pretty cut and dry.
I think you just want to know that it was a legal law of record prior to the regulations.
Okay.
They did a free split
So this
in the 90s, so they already did their
They already
free
did
split,
their free
so now they're going to subdivision of the other part.
I wasn't here last meeting. Road frontage, you looked at it. I mean, there's more than enough.
This should be a chart with
Yeah.
compliance of all the.
Yeah. What's your total acre?
I got 25 points, like 3.
So it's like 11 and a half and
Yeah.
13 and
Yeah.
3/4.
Yeah, so the existing final to me, I'm gonna keep the 13. So, yeah, it's just gonna be fine.
Oh, nice road.
Yeah. Any of the board members have any questions? If not, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm the neighbor on the other side, 185 Rockville. The property has been in the family for 60 years, and we'd like to keep it in the family. So I'm here in support of the subdivision.
Could you state your name for the?
I'm Cheryl Musser, 197 Rockville Road.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the public or comments? Anything else on the board? Seeing nothing, I need a motion to close the public hearing from somebody.
I motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Public hearing motion has been made to close the public hearing. It's been made and seconded. Public hearing is over at 7:06. Okay. At 7:07, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission Actually, you could probably leave it for now. if you want. Yep. Once again, could I hear the members present?
Judith Valley, alternate.
Alternate.
John Savage, alternate.
Pat Ray.
Full member? Yeah. David Needham, full member on the phone. Is he on the phone or computer? He's on the phone. On the phone, Scott Davidson. Steve Stefanski. full
Yep.
member. So purposes of the plannings on the meeting, Stephen's on, myself, Patricia, Scott, and who was on last?
I was on the last meeting, John.
Okay. So John will be a full voting member this evening. Approval of minutes from August 2021. Have all of the board members had a chance to take a look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any issues?
The same, you sent the minutes then, dated.
Yeah.
The month.
Yeah, the first one on the agenda though shows the August.
Yeah. If I just could make a comment, that was my last.
Absolutely.
At the beginning, but it's sort of. Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done, Bob?
Yeah.
I had a chance to look at it. Could I get a motion with changes to the spell?
I motion to correct the spelling for Judith.
Second. For the August 11th.
For the August 11th.
Minutes. Seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We also have minutes from the July 12th meeting. Everybody had a chance to look at that? Any issues or? Scott, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't physically have them in front of me. I know there was some question, I forget what it was from last month.
It was the, setting the date for
Public
the
hearing.
public hearing,
Yeah,
taken out.
Okay.
okay. As long as that was taken out, then I'm fine. I'll make a motion to approve them as long as that's taken out.
Yep. I didn't see any issues either.
I'll second this motion.
All in favor? Opposed? Minutes passed. Next item on the agenda. We have additions to the agenda, which I don't think we have any, do we? Okay. Any citizen comments or anything before the board that anybody from the public would like to bring forth? Wow, good meeting. Let's go. Old business, 758 Nathan Musser of 185 Rockville Road, Barnstable, Connecticut, is seeking approval for a subdivision of the property. We just had the meeting, public hearing. Is there anything that anybody sees? And then we would need a motion. Approving or disapproving. Linda? You want to approve? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passed. Subdivision's good.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
We get to keep one, right? for-
Yeah, we have to have a copy.
I can leave on it.
Yeah.
I'll do this one. anything else you needed.
He's already done the application, gave the money, everything's all set. Okay, yep, you should be all set.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Did, he get the site line approval from the state?
DOT is not gonna approve it until we approve it.
Okay, but everything that the recommendations that the DOT put on that are on the new print, correct?
Yeah, they're reflected on these on the table.
Yep.
Okay.
Next, under old business, 760 Dunkin' Donuts and 251 Main Street, Allentown, Connecticut, is seeking a site plan approval for a storage shed. Is there anybody here who can represent that? All right, Scott, seeing how you're chairman, how do you want to go forth with this? We don't have anybody in front of us.
Their plans are right here.
Okay.
This one. What they want and this is what they want in their building.
Yep.
Permit application. No, this one.
Does Pete have any information on it?
It's just a small accessory structure going up in the back for the use of storage. I think the dimensions are on there for it too. It's marginal.
Is it basically right where they have that little shed right now? Yeah.
It's gonna be
So is the little shed staying or is it going?
I think they're swapping it out. I don't know, months ago since I've seen them.
It's saying.
Is it staying? Okay, it's not going
It's staying. And then what about, there's like a rear end of a truck there. Is that staying too? Or is that on the site plan?
On the site plan? Not on the site plan.
We're talking this area right here.
Yeah.
I'll go through the-
Probably going in place of that, I assume. Even like 2 months ago, didn't come back.
Yeah.
They sent somebody the next bed last.
Yeah.
Right.
That wasn't going.
Stock area. Yeah. Yep.
Application.
Gotta be on the app. Not showing here. though.
Right here.
Metal shed. Metal shed.
Yeah.
10 by 16 metal shed. Pick it up on the phone.
10 by 16 metal shed for storage of paper goods for business.
It's becoming more and more popular, so absolutely. It's trying to store on the bills back.
They have that See,
So my question is it a metal shed like you would buy at Home Depot metal shed, or is this a metal shed like that they're pouring a slab and putting it on? Like a metal garage building.
Right, that's the applicant.
I'm not seeing anything, and there's nobody here to answer any of our questions. Scott.
Yeah, that's a, I mean, that's a different thing.
Because
That's a huge difference.
yeah, and the other thing is it is in the village district. We've been asking for architectural review on everything.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. And I know it doesn't mean a lot, but
I suggest you take it, will strongly encourage it.
it is also one of the regs, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this type of, there's a lot of different metal. Especially this. That's what it says.
Yeah.
Just 10 by 16 metal, there's nothing here.
This AD, if it doesn't.
No.
If it's a Lowe's type of shed.
Right.
You're putting.
So can we table it and
Yeah,
ask, somebody contact them and ask them for more plans
Or,
or better depth or representation?
yep.
Yes.
Does the board feel the same way?
I'm not
so-
comfortable voting on anything when there's no one here to answer any questions.
Neither am I.
They don't have that company.
So we need a motion.
Make a motion to table it till we have a representative.
Pete, how many days do we have before we have to act on it though?
when was the application date?
Last
Last month.
I believe we accepted it at the last meeting.
8/11.
Yeah, so I think we got plenty to talk about. What's that meeting in October? What's the date?
Yeah.
Okay.
65. Yeah, it's October date.
Yeah.
No, 14. No, 13.
Now 13th of October.
9 weeks, 63 days, you have time. 2 days, I can't.
Could you reach out,
Mm-hmm.
give them a call?
Yeah, we second. Do we get a second? Yes, I second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed?
Aye.
No vote. Unanimous. So yeah, if you could reach out to them, give them a call. Tell them we'd love to see somebody who can answer some questions that we have.
Specifically structure type,
Structure type, metal quality,
foundation.
anything more than just metal box in the dimensions. Color, quality. I mean, a rendering would be wonderful. We made them do,
Height,
yep, we actually had them do that when they did the whole building over back in the day.
Yep.
With the glass front and what they were gonna put, just be more informative. All right.
and we need to know whether everything else is staying and this is an addition to, or if something's being removed.
Or replacing that box, yep. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is correspondence.
oh,
Scott,
no,
did
we
you,
got new business.
Nope, new business.
okay, new business, sorry. 761 Crystal Hill and Michael Brown's 67A Arcadia Road, Hope Valley Road, are seeking a site plan approval for a curb cut easement at 201 Pendleton Hill Road. All right, folks here. Excellent. See, you're somewhere better than Duncan, right?
Yeah, we are.
Those are the
This-
first you guys
okay,
go on.
you- Like to come up and take a look. Main,
All right, so really what we need is an encroachment permit, because we have a hill that needs to come down, right? DOT approved it just with with us taking down,
Like the way it is.
yeah, just with the hill being,
Built to just knock down people with the foot line.
right.
Who owns it?
we do.
The hill is you own.
Yeah.
So you're not infringing on anyone else's property.
No,
It was on us.
yeah,
This is the site.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's.
yeah.
I grew up on this road, I've been there since 72, so I.
Ah, okay. No, no, and to get the permit, it just needs to be approved by you guys. And then we can file for it and then. I know. There's always another step, I'm like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly where to see it.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere near the neighbor's property.
Even the hill kind of comes up,
Yeah.
comes down and starts tapering almost flat right next to, the neighbor's property. So really, I mean, we're not even touching anything close to this. And it's probably, I would guess, maybe a 70-80 foot section. To the wood line, which is almost look like, yeah. Take it right up. There's the, yeah. I mean, it's on the verge, you can see it fine right now in the truck. Yeah, small car, you have just enough where you can't, so. That's why I said you just knock it down, put some snow on it.
Yeah. Right.
Put snow on it.
I don't understand why you need all this, your property.
Because
Right.
it's in that magical land from so far from Sound Road.
Yep,
The
it is.
state owns.
I know.
And
Like,
then
yeah,
the
I know, 'cause
excavations,
we were like,
they
you know,
the excavations on the yards pumped up.
Yeah.
This was some sort of designation. for the
Yeah.
yard. There's more than 100 yards required, it's only.
Right.
Are you
right.
removing it or are you gonna push it
Push
back?
it back.
Well, yeah, we're gonna remove what's there, and there's actually a little sinkhole, probably right over here. We're just gonna backfill into that, and anything else, we're just gonna put it on.
You're not
the
removing
side.
it from the property.
No. I'm saying that we're gonna figure out.
Yeah, do it. Yes.
Yeah.
We will not have
it up.
The dirt, yeah.
We have one built out of this, so I'm sure we'll be able to find a spot for it.
Any issues other than that, Pete, you've seen? I mean, it's what do we get?
Yeah, pretty much just needed the approval.
Yep.
Excavations into the state.
Yeah. I don't personally see any issues whatsoever. Any other, right,
That's what it's all about.
any
Yeah.
other questions or comments from the board members? Scott, did you get a chance to look at the map?
Well, I don't have the map. I'm looking at the GPS on it. So I'm assuming we're talking about the hill to the north of where the for sale sign is currently?
Yes,
Okay. So you just want to cut that down to get a sight line. So I'm assuming you would go up to the yellow sign roughly? The curve sign?
slightly past.
Yeah, you talk about the for sale sign?
So there's for sale sign, and then there's a hill, and you've got the middle of that hill. There's a telephone pole, and then it comes back down around, and then you have the curve sign there. So I'm assuming you just want to take that hill
Yes.
out there.
Yeah, it's, I would probably guess maybe anywhere between 70 and 80 feet where
Okay.
double poles right in the middle.
Yeah.
Gotta cut out.
Yep.
And they're keeping the material on property, on site.
Okay. But we're not approving anything other than
Curb cut,
the curb cut.
correct.
Okay. And that's on an approved,
Subdivision, yes.
okay.
Boundaries had done it, right?
Yeah,
Do all of them.
They do a lot.
I know, we were recommended that.
Yeah, because if you look back through the woods, you can see where it would like flatten right off.
Yep.
I have no issue with it.
It's straightforward.
Yeah.
So can I get a motion?
I motion that we approve the curb cut
At
at
7.
67 Arcadia Road.
Nope.
201.
201.
No, 201 Pendleton Hill.
Pendleton Hill.
That's just what we did now.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay,
Can you keep one?
yeah. You like to-
Just one. I got my gosh.
All right.
I'll say, well,
Do you guys need them? Or just need the one?
We just need
Just need one.
for the record.
Take them back.
Because they're
They're
kind of
expensive.
expensive. I spent a lot of money on this.
Yeah.
You're all done, take
But thank you for bringing those in.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll see you guys again.
Yep.
So. Thank you. Yep. Okay, yep, right. Okay.
Yes.
Just a quick note, the two that got approved need to, an approval put in the paper. And, they would be approved 15 days after it's been in the paper.
You understand that?
No.
So you're not technically approved until after it's been posted for 15 days.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, you have the approval subject to somebody appealing.
right.
Okay. So, okay. So they post it and I-
Yeah, we're gonna-
You're approved.
I oppose it,
Okay.
moving here.
Right.
Yeah.
The only way that I get someone appeals, if they got in trouble with doing it without going
Yeah.
Yeah.
hours. And they think.
Or if there is- or if there is-
Self-inflicted.
Yeah, or selling over 100 yards of material
Yeah.
off the property.
Yeah, triaxle.
Correct. Correspondence. Do we have?
No.
We have nothing. CEO report. Steve, what's going on?
Everything that's been here, other than, Jack Cipriano's property down at, Forge Hill Road in the corner there. Fortunately, it's not really our issue right now because everything, all the activity he's doing is in state Connecticut property, so it's more of their problem right now.
Okay.
But he went to wetlands and he's been dealing with the wetlands part of it to go through it. I don't know understand where it was on that, to the right here, so they put the wetlands side on that. Other than that, just everything that's been here.
Okay. General planning discussion. Richard Roberts is going to address.
General plan.
Yeah.
We will not be.
And then I can- Yep. Really? Okay. Cool. All right, bye.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. You probably saw or heard some of the excitement during the course of the legislative session. We had 24-hour-long hearings about the state taking over zoning and mandating all kinds of things. And as the legislative session went on, things just kind of slowed down to a low boil. And fortunately, most of the really difficult and I'd say overreaching proposals kind of fell by the wayside, at least temporarily. And there were a number of things that did make it through. On the agenda, the first one, I'll take the second one first. The marijuana ordinance. The legislature needed a special session in order to pass the 300-page adult use cannabis statute. And probably 280 pages of it relate to who's eligible to get licenses and social equity preferences and lotteries for people and regulations on who can do what and so forth. And it's altogether about a page and a half that tells towns what they can and can't do to regulate it or prohibit it. And if you read it carefully, you know, those pages, those 2 pages are kind of a mess in terms of giving you any kind of meaningful guidance as to, you know, what you should be doing. I mean, they use terms like special permit in there. So you think, oh, it's a special permit process. Well, the people who wrote it didn't mean special permit in the sense that you guys deal with every month. They meant special, like people would know about it. You know, they had fireworks go off when someone got it, rather than, you know, having to have a public hearing or anything like that. So where it is now is the state's putting together the program. Consumer Protection is trying to put together the regulations, the process and so forth to figure out who the people are who are going to be eligible to apply for these licenses, how they're going to get them, what the criteria are to be able to get them. And probably the best estimate is nobody except maybe somebody who right now has a license to sell, to manufacture, grow, or sell medical marijuana. Nobody other than those people will be getting any kind of permits or licenses until next spring. That's sort of the time. So what a lot of towns have kind of done in the interim is say, holy crap, you know, we got to figure out what it is that we want to do about this. And some of them, the town council, board of selectmen, town meeting, sort of taking the bull by the horns and said, no, we don't want it. And have enacted ordinances banning cannabis establishments in town. And, you know, that kind of takes the problem off your plate because you don't have to worry about drafting regulations for something that, that they would have decided to prohibit. What a lot of other towns are doing is at your level enacting a moratorium, basically saying we're not going to approve any of these things for 6 months, 9 months, a year until we figure out what it is that we want to do, whether we want them, whether we don't want them, if we want them, where are they going to be, what the restrictions are going to be. So it's kind of in your court as well as, the Board of Selectmen at this point to figure out, how you want to deal with it. And if the public sentiment is, we just don't want to have either the growers or the retailers in town, you can do that either through zoning or through an ordinance. If the sentiment is, there's good location for growing, but we don't want any retailing, you can draft your regulations accordingly. Vice versa, if you don't want the growing or you want, are okay with growing and retailing, figure out where, which zone it would apply to, and what criteria you want to put on it, like not within 1,500 feet of a school or a church or a nursing home or those kinds of things. So that's basically where it is right now. The clock is ticking, but it's not like there's a crying urgency for me to do anything. I don't honestly know what, if anything, the Board of Selectmen are thinking about in terms of big picture, whether they want to have, propose a prohibition to the people to vote on at a town meeting, or whether they're going to leave it up to you to figure it out. That's sort of the lay of the land right now. I don't know whether you know anything more about what people might have been talking about, or whether you have any questions.
Yeah, well, I do have a question. The medical marijuana and marijuana growing now, hemp, is that still under that, or is hemp a completely different creature?
Yeah, it's completely different.
I mean, I know the THC levels and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's regulated.
Just over in Plainfield on Route 12, there was a grower for, what did you try, 2 years? Tranquil,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And, but, I mean, are they doing legislation against that as well, or just the marijuana?
Yeah, just adult use recreational marijuana.
Right.
And it's been defined in such a way that it doesn't include hemp because of the THC contents and so forth, as well as, you're not going to grow marijuana to make rope,
No.
or
No.
cattle feed or anything like that.
Do they have any, restrictions of the percentage? Like, I know you can go out to other places like Vegas and you get stuff that's 27%. it's like, engineered.
Yeah, and frankly, I think that would be up to consumer protection, not to you. I mean, they're.
No, right, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
they're
saying,
probably, trying to discourage mega weed that's
Yeah.
just gonna like,
Yeah.
kill the users or something like that, but,
Yeah, I know they're like doctoring it.
yeah. I think they were, when they were writing the legislation, they looked at everybody's around the country, but I think they found that, the Massachusetts model seemed kind of okay because they weren't having major problems with that there, but, remains to be seen. The good news for you is that at least for the first few years, it's limited by population, so you'll only have to worry about, having one grower and one retailer in town until you get to 25,000 people. Then you'll get the second one.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that's a few years away,
Yeah, you need more subdivisions.
in a lot bigger school.
Evan?
Two in Massive Water.
I know a guy who works up in New Hampshire. He's one of the main growers who's also set up facilities. Yeah.
Monsters facility.
Yeah, we represented the medical grower in Watertown when they got their license, and it's an old Pittsburgh paint factory that they converted.
Yep.
It's like 85,000 square feet or something, and then.
I
we had to
worked
add
out
on.
that Curaleaf too, up there is one of the ones I did when I first started.
Yeah, in the Ensign Pickford building.
Yep.
So in other words, like the growing facility, you're talking something like Rose Wow.
No, the funny thing is, you wouldn't know it because they repurposed buildings. When I pulled up, I'm like, am I in the right place?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the one,
Grow lights.
yeah, they just
Yeah, no, I know.
inside what they're doing is monsters.
yeah, the one at
Yeah.
Simsbury was an executive office with it, got it.
A good job that way.
Yeah, the growers that would be permitted, at least at the outset, they're calling micro cultivators. I forget how many square feet, I mean, it's like 2,000 to 4,000, so it's, it's probably prohibitively expensive to do something that small, but, that's the size that they would be looking at initially, trying to encourage, and then, the bigger ones would probably go somewhere else.
That would be a lot of people.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of stuff with us.
Like 6 plants. Yeah. When they do that.
You can't grow your own until 2023.
But then it's like something like 6 plants and
You got a year.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's complicated.
You see all these little applications for steel sheds.
Yeah, we're only gonna have electricity.
Yeah, steel shed with high intensity lights and water.
no snow on the road.
Yeah.
I'm switching from the day business.
Yeah, it's-
I was say, just give something about Griswold's, we got a meeting on Monday, we're looking at moratorium on Griswold. Grounds doing the same thing in October, put a moratorium on, building, figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah, Putnam, Stocker Dam.
And that was come more. from the select
Because-
because-
Well, no, you guys,
No,
are
you
setting
can
up
do-
the zone side.
You can do that, but frankly, I think figuring out or trying to sound them out as to whether there's anything that they're gonna be working on, because you don't need to waste the time and money of putting in a moratorium if they're gonna prohibit it, because moratorium is technically an amendment to your zoning regulations, so you have to have the public hearing and the notices.
So either way, you have, we put just a prohibition on it.
Some of the other things there, the first few parts talk about, there were a lot of amendments to basically the enabling statute 8-2, which talks about what zoning regulations can do, can't do, and may do. And frankly, a lot of it is kind of feel-good wording changes to encourage you to allow, more diverse types of housing stock primarily. That was, frankly, I think that was kind of a concession to the folks who were advocating for, the middle housing and the transit-oriented development and all the other things that, that were getting promoted. One thing that did get passed that does affect you directly, and it's not affordable housing per se, but it's the accessory dwelling units. And what it does is essentially say that, well, right now, every house that you have in town can have an accessory dwelling. As long as they comply with setbacks, building code, and septic and so forth. You can't limit who can live there. You can't require a special permit. You can't impose greater setbacks on them than you do on regular houses and so forth. So, you know, basically picture, you know, every single family residence in town either having a portion of the house converted to an accessory dwelling unit, or, you know, if the space allows with the existing setbacks and so forth, and lot coverage, you know, either a separate, an attached or detached accessory dwelling.
They have to meet all the existing codes and regulations and everything else, but if they have it, they're just saying you can't stop them.
Pretty much, yeah, it's an as of right approval. You can't have trying to remember because it was worded backwards. You can't have a minimum square footage. Trying to remember how it was worded. It can't be less than 30% of the size of the principal dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is greater. You know, so you can't force them to be smaller than that. And
They put a cap on it?
no,
Okay, so you could build a bigger house.
yeah, I mean,
than the original one, as long
yeah,
as
as long as you
as
get
it
the
fits.
setback. So this guy with a 13-acre lot could have a 2,700 foot house and a
Right.
2,600 foot accessory dwelling.
It's exactly what you said, a maximum net floor area for an accessory apartment of not less than 30% of the net floor area of the principal dwelling, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. Except that such regulations may allow a larger net floor area.
Yeah, the one thing, yeah, I mean, the one thing that you can do if that really gives you trouble, you know, I kind of went through your regulations and I saw that, you know, generally you allow single family and two family, you know, and that's pretty much all this would be.
We got the in-law apartment.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Yeah, I mean, you allow single family, you allow two family, I think multifamily with special permit. You know, that's essentially what you're already looking at. And you do have the accessory apartment, the in-law ones that have, you know, 8 or 10 specific restrictions. I'd say probably 4 or 5 of those restrictions are ones that aren't permitted under this legislation.
Right,
So
they don't have to be attached anymore.
they don't have to be attached, they don't have to be the family, they don't necessarily even have to have the principal owner living there. You know, so kind of the cut to the chase on it is that if you are comfortable with your current regulations and don't want to roll the dice and see what comes down the road with, you know, as of right accessory dwellings on every existing house, you can opt out of that provision. It's just you have to do it before the end of next year. And it's, you know, sort of a complicated, well, it's not complicated, but it's a multi-step process to opt out. And, you know, I know a couple of towns have taken a look at it and they have, you know, they have kind of a dense downtown and they're like, no, this just isn't gonna work here. Other towns that are primarily, you know, 2-acre lots and more, you know, taking a view, you know, this isn't gonna be a big deal. You might want to think about how it would affect, you know, lots near the lake and so forth, you know, because I don't know what your setbacks are. I don't know what your lot coverages are. You know, but you know, you're potentially looking at increasing the density of almost every residential dwelling in town. So if that's something that gives you heartburn, you do have the opportunity to opt out with the end of next year. And it just takes a 2/3 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then, you know, essentially the Board of Selectmen has to ratify your opt out.
Can you opt out based on specific acreage at all, or is it just?
I think frankly, it's all or nothing. I mean, it's like we don't want to be governed by these statutory provisions. We want to be governed by our own regulations. And, you know, as an example, there's one town that pretty much allows what that is, but only for lots that are an acre or more. And they have parts of town where, you know, development back in the 50s and 60s was on, you know, maybe half acre, quarter acre lots, and that would just be a little too intense. So that they're choosing to opt out and stick with their, you know, flexible accessory dwelling unit regulations as applied to 1 acre or more lots. You know, and if somebody comes in and they have, you know, they can comply with the, you know, the accessory, the in-law apartment regulations that you have, you know, you still have that. It doesn't go away. But I think the question is, for you guys is, you know, would you rather stick with the status quo, or, you know, are you comfortable being governed by these new sets of regulations? Because, you know, as a practical matter, most of those applications will never come to you because they're, you know, they're as of right. All somebody would have to do is show that they fit within the confines of the, you know, the setback requirements and so forth, and, you know, health district signs off on the sewage. And be like a kind of a rubber stamp site plan approval on your part. You couldn't necessarily question them about parking and who's going to live there, and, you know, that sort of stuff.
What's the requirement from the commission?
Yeah, I mean, unless you have an administrative approval process, I mean, you could do it that way, or, you know, do it as site plan. You just can't require a special permit in a public hearing. And if you do have it come to the commission, it's basically a 65-day approval.
Now, just for a question, I don't know if this pertains or not. I mean, perfect example would have been tonight. They came in with a subdivision. They cut their lot in half. They built 2 houses. Technically, if we go with this, they could build a house on the same parcel without having to do the subdivision. And have 2 domiciles basically on the same property.
Yes.
For the same, so they wouldn't have had to come before the board.
They do the subdivision, technically.
They do it without coming before the board.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of
I
them
mean-
would have to be accessory to the other one.
Correct.
Yeah, but that, all that is.
Right, if you run the parcel out.
Right.
So you would lose, you wouldn't have 2 lots, you would only have 1 lot.
Well, where I
Correct.
thought you were going with that was they have 2 lots, now they can build 2 houses on each of the 2 lots.
That is well.
Technically, yeah, I mean, they could double
Yeah.
it up.
That's right. And they can be rental properties.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So I don't know what's in there.
You still regulate the short-term rentals, though.
yeah, that stayed in there. So if you've got people that are doing, you know, vacation rentals and you got problems with the weekly.
Right, but if it's on yearly leases.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's subdivision rates are basically out the window
So
for
that
the most part. Not
I mean-
completely, but
theoretically, everybody in town could put
Yes.
one up and then you. tax
if they have
the whole
room and setbacks and.
system. Yeah, a lot of people have the 2 acres and 4 acres. Yeah.
I mean, look how much fun I could have.
Well, you can only put one.
One.
You can
I know,
put 'em
I
really
can put it
far
in the middle of
away
my
from
property,
everybody.
right? One though. Right.
Four, I could put
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I mean, the whole motivation behind this was to encourage housing opportunity for people. But, you know, it's the sort of thing that it works, you know, it works really well in some contexts and it might not work well in others. And, you know, if, for example, this legislation was aimed at Westport and Woodbridge that have exclusionary zoning and don't allow 2 families anywhere, and you already do allow it, you know, you kind of might be suffering some unintended consequences by.
Now, do the folks have to live on the property for X amount of time? I'm just thinking, could it become an Airbnb?
Well,
That's a
you can still regulate those.
Right.
That would be a shelter.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to provide housing opportunity, not a Motel 6
Right.
on every house.
See, like you said, a lot of people putting in garages or apartments above.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one as far as things for you to think about. One of the other ones that we'll figure out a way to make it less painful for you is that starting January 1st, 2023, each of you have to have at least 4 hours of training in that year, including 1 hour on affordable housing and fair housing policy. Some of the groups like the Bar Association and Yukon Clear are trying to put together, working with OPM to put together basically training modules so that it can either be done remotely or online or kind of centralized locations, or basically if you get enough people to make it worthwhile, they'll come out and give the training so that you can comply with that. One of the things that got taken out of the legislation, the earlier draft said that if you didn't have your 4 hours of training, you couldn't vote on anything. And I was commenting to one of the people who was advocating, saying, well, I'd really be hating to try to get a variance in 2024, when none of the members of the ZBA had training, so you could never get 4 votes in favor of it. It's like, oh, I never thought of that. So that got dropped. But, they still have to report at the end of the year whether everybody's been properly educated. There's no direct penalty that I'm aware of or that anybody knows of. We're not doing it, but I guess if you made a decision and somebody wasn't happy with it and they appealed, they could point out to the judge that you people were thoroughly unqualified to vote on the application because you hadn't gone to the education campus. Well, I know, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they've had 4 hours in their lives. And you'll be in good hands because zoning enforcement officers have to be certified too. So it's not just you. There was some, because so many land use approvals have timeframes on, site plan subdivision approvals, clock ticks and runs out. And during the pandemic, there was a concern that, things were going to expire, but people couldn't get in and get them extended. The legislature passed some, kind of super extensions, so that things that previously were good for 9 years are now good for 14 with a possible extension to 19. So, I think if you have something that hadn't expired by July 1st of this year, it as a practical matter may never expire. What else interests you? Yeah, I mean that's already on you. I don't know. I think you've been. Yeah, the selectmen are working on that. So. Yeah, I mean, and I guess the timing wasn't great because if you were doing your POCD now, you could kind of do it together. But the affordable housing plan is, it's mandatory, but it's not difficult. You just kind of need to assess where you are and what kinds of strategies you could enact to make it more possible for people to produce affordable housing in town. I think your regulations are, not so restrictive that it would be a problem. Anyway.
One of our biggest problems is that we don't have public transportation.
Right. Oh yeah, I mean that's a big problem for a lot of places.
So that's, and talk about affordable housing for people that don't have a,
Well, I think the other thing too, though, is that, you know, the concept of what constitutes affordable housing, there's workforce housing, which, you know, it's not necessarily people who are at the poverty level. You know, the people who may be making 80% of the median income for Greater New London County, which is probably a surprisingly high number, you know, in the grand scheme of things. And, you know, if you build a subdivision, 10 houses on 50 acres and, you know, restrict 2 of those, 3 of those to people who make, you know, 80% of the, you know, the median income, you know, those are probably people that work in, you know, service industries, you know, maybe teachers, you know, that kind of thing. I represented somebody that did a workforce housing project in East Lyme a few years ago. And, you know, it was sort of eye-opening to people who qualified to get those places. I mean, they were young teachers, young professionals, people in the public works department, you know, that kind of thing. It wasn't, you know, the kind of people that you wouldn't want to have as neighbors.
well, I didn't mean to reply that.
No, yeah, I wasn't questioning your motives. It's just, you know, that phrase sort of sets off alarm bells with a lot of people. You know, particularly when you're being told you have to do something. This is just basically trying to figure out with your, you know, with your infrastructure, your resources, you know, what you have to offer, you know, in terms of, you know, buildable lots, you know, what could you be doing to encourage it? Not, you must, you know, make 10% of your housing affordable because, you know, CHFA mortgages and things like that, you probably can get there a lot of different ways. That was the bulk of what got passed this year that was of interest. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that didn't get passed that, you know, would have been horrifying. But I'm guessing there'll be another attempt next year.
I mean,
It never goes away.
No, it's incremental.
Yeah.
in my mind, that says something about the function of the legislature to get their power. It really seems incredibly inefficient sometimes, the way the bills are just sort of thrown at the wall as far as I.
Yeah, I mean, and that is part of it is that, you know, a couple of the guys I've worked with and I had been given some of the early drafts of both pro and anti, and, you know, we were like working in secret to show things to each other, saying, what do you think about this? I was told not to let anybody else see it. But, you know, it's like, well, here are 5 problems I see right off the bat. And, you know, that was kind of how it went. And, you know, some of the, you know, really good intentioned things, you know, would have been utterly unworkable for, you know, 95% of the towns in the state. And I'll answer any other questions you have that you think I can answer. I do like the efficiency of the meetings.
It was really easy for me. We've had some doozies.
I know, I'm chairman of our commission, and we spent like 15 months doing Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And the only place I could do it in my house was the place with the worst Wi-Fi. So I had the camera on, and I would have to call in because I was always lagging on the sound. People were making fun of me, and it was just an ordeal. So we got all excited in July when you know, when we decided we were going to come back for our in-person meeting. And I guess most people didn't get the memo that it was an in-person meeting because we were sitting there waiting for people to show up, and I was getting all these text messages, where's the Zoom link? You know, and, you know, one guy was calling from 45 minutes away, and it's like, well, I was gonna call in. He said, well, you still can. I'll bend the microphone down, so we have a quorum here, but, yeah, it was funny because there are two people on the commission who have never met most of the other people on the commission because they got added back in April and June of 2020. One of them I met somewhere else and was like, oh my God, you're really tall. You look so much smaller on Zoom. Not related specifically to land use, but legislation to allow remote and hybrid meetings at least through April 30th of next year is still in effect. You know, it took away some of the restrictions, like every single document had to be posted on the internet 24 hours in advance and that sort of thing. But it will be interesting to see how it progresses because there were, you know, as with the other stuff, there were a lot of ideas that people in the governor's office had about what towns should be doing to accommodate people that would be unworkable and difficult. So, you know, one of them was basically mandating that every meeting be hybrid, you know, and some people said, well, we only have one room that's set up for it. And sometimes we have 3 or 4 meetings at a time. And, you know, who's going to sit and watch the math curriculum subcommittee meeting, you know, anyway? So, you know, that's going to be a tug of war because there's some people in the governor's office and the legislature felt very strongly that the whole remote hybrid environment was a good one for, you know, make transparency and providing access to everybody, but they really hadn't thought about the actual logistical problems that, you know, towns would face to be able to, you know, essentially put on a TV show every time you have a public meeting. You know, what do you do when the technology breaks down? You know.
So that's only, they're only approved to April 30th, what year?
Next year. It was a compromise. And there's a task force that has been assembled to try to come up with recommendations going forward. And I'll let you know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I was asked to be on that. You know, if I quit after the next meeting, you know.
Get some of the federal funding from the relief plan, federal relief plan, some money for the IT departments.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that will be some of it, but I mean, they completely went off the rails on things like the concept of having remote town meetings. And it's like, well, you know, how am I going to know if 860-378-4252, you know, is a registered elector in the town of Allentown? Correct. Yeah, one of the towns we represent, they had advertised it as a remote meeting. You know, like the legal notice, this town meeting was going to be a remote meeting, and it had the Zoom link. And then somehow there was confusion in town hall, and they were advertising it on the radio and in the media and on Facebook as a hybrid meeting, and telling people to come to the middle school. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. So they basically had to send out, you know, red alert sound trucks to tell people, don't come to the middle school. And if you do, bring your phone and, you know, sit like 3 seats away from the person next to you so that we're not all dying of feedback. You know, because they had advertised it as a remote meeting and had to do it that way. It was just a debacle. I mean, people were there and I can't hear you. And, you know, all of the selectmen were sitting together and you know, talking to each other and then when they got to the voting, they had the Zoom polling pop up where you could vote on the questions and, you know, people were yelling in, I can't see it. Meanwhile, somebody's sitting out on the road with like a parade of motorcycles going by them, you know, drowning out the entire meeting. It was interesting.
Proctor's gonna be quick on the trigger.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so while you're still there, and I know you responded to Tracy, and I saw the email on that in regards to the profanity, the sign with profanity on private property, just so the rest of the board understands what's going on with that.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Was that a while ago?
Yeah.
Why?
There were some people that complained living out at Bailey Pond. That a man had a banner on his house, pretty large one, and it was near a, you know, there's children and all that other good stuff, and it was pretty,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was last year?
no, this is recent,
Okay. No.
and this is what's on the banner. I'm not
Now
gonna
I'm
read it.
curious.
I'm not gonna read it. But there were school children that walked by there, and the Bailey Pond residents are quite upset. But isn't there some kind of law, a profanity law, especially around children?
The problem is we have a First Amendment.
I know, that first
And it's, yeah, I mean, it's on private property and it's political speech, which is generally given the highest level of protection.
He also puts it on his truck, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, I had a flurry of those questions in October of last year,
Yeah.
after banners, flags, pennants and so forth were being put up all over the place. And yeah, I mean, if you have a regulation that you're enforcing uniformly against large banners, regardless of what they say, then you can try to enforce it if you can say, you know, these large banners are a danger to public health, safety, and welfare, regardless of what they say. You know, and that therefore we are removing all large banners in town. But if you try to regulate signs and commercial speech, and especially political speech based on content, you're more than likely going to lose. And it could be, you know, a civil rights claim.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it. I was getting gas down to the gas station, got accosted by somebody yelling at me about why we don't
Right.
do anything about this. It's like, wow, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because it's probably gotten worse the last 10 years than it had before. But I mean, there were cases about that word and,
Yeah,
you know, so forth going back.
I think what's
20,
upsetting
30
him
years.
so much is it's near a bus stop.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, one of the other towns where we had this problem last October, it was again, you know, on the way to school and all the kids on the buses were giggling and, you know, pointing and that kind of stuff. And, you know, it was entirely on private property. And, you know, you just really can't regulate political speech based on content on private property unless it's, you know, for example, a sign that is blocking the vision of people driving and it's a legitimate public safety hazard. And, you know, even if the sign said, I love puppies, you would still, you know, remove it in that same location and situation. So.
What is the regulation for the size of a sign? Because that would be political sign.
How was the sign put up?
Mhm.
How was the sign put up?
What do you mean?
I didn't even heard about it, so.
I have not seen it myself. I just had it screamed in my head what it
There's
was
size
saying.
content signs that are allowed on residential properties, depending on the type of sign.
It's apparently some banner that
You know, regulate.
covers his whole house or.
Yeah, we don't do
Oh,
we got two banners.
Yeah.
We don't do banners.
There has to be a hard regulate banners.
Hard sign. that-
Or like a hard sign would be like that big wooden one past the gas
Right.
station on the left
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Yeah. With the
Which
size.
again, that does not meet our zoning regulations.
Grandfather did. Talking about Bronson's?
Uh.
Bronson's been there forever.
No, I'm not talking about, well, the political sign on the.
Well, that's a structure that's there.
Right.
That's the one right before Two Brothers.
Yeah.
Right, that's the one I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, everybody knows about
Yeah.
that.
It could be a metal shed.
Yeah.
What I've been told is that it's all well good that it doesn't meet regulations, but the expense involved in doing anything about it is prohibitive for the town. I mean, that it just,
Is that true?
Problem with that one is the owner of that has nothing to do with time and money on his hands and doesn't really care. He'd love it to go to court just to glorify it more.
Basically, he said that.
He would want us to do that because we'd be more promoting. the way
Well,
we
going to
do
the
it.
paper to do it.
Yeah. He had an article in the paper with his thumbs up. with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the towns that we used to represent, they were trying to encourage people to support their town and businesses, and the town's name starts with a W. So lots of people were putting these enormous wooden W signs out on their lawn to, show support for the business industry. One guy put WTF in enormous letters on his lawn, and they tried to enforce, they couldn't do it through zoning, so they were trying to do the historic district regulations, and it's a cliche to say they made a federal case out of it, but they've made a federal case out of it, and it's cost the town tens of thousands of dollars to litigate, because, when you have that kind of thing, you can get the ACLU and, other people who have similar thoughts to,
He was giggling, he gave it in the office on that one, the first time I talked to him about it. He was like, he's the one who called the paper off, got the newspaper. Like I said, I'm not gonna get famous over this stupid sign.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not gonna do it.
Oh, you're not gonna take the bait.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one quick question, or clarification, I should say. So the new affordable housing stuff, is the new plan that needs to be put in place, is that the town's requirement, or is that an actual planning and zoning requirement?
The affordable housing plan,
Yes,
that's a state law requirement, 830J, I think.
correct. Now, who is actually on the hook? Is it the town's required, or is it specifically the planning and zoning commission?
Actually, it is open-ended. It only says the municipality has to approve it.
Okay.
I think in a lot of places, it's been planning and zoning because they would be the ones taking the concrete steps to make it happen. Here, if the selectmen have kind of taken the laboring oar,
Yep.
it would make sense to coordinate with you just so that you're not working at cross purposes. But if they have the inclination to work on it and save you the trouble, I'd go with that.
I just wanted clarification on that. That's all.
No, actually, that has been a question that has circulated a lot recently on the planning listserv is, all it says is the municipality must adopt it, and is it the planning and zoning commission or the town? And some say, they're just having the planning and zoning commission do it. Others say they're having both of them, kind of adopt it just so that everybody's got buy-in.
Okay.
Oh, I'm turning my back on.
Yeah, he's just on the phone. Anybody else? Questions?
see people in person.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions along the way, definitely feel free to reach out.
Your motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn
Second that motion.
at 8:15. 8:17. Sure. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Garage now.